Every cult starts the same way. Not with robes and chanting. Not with a charismatic madman demanding obedience. It starts with a group of people who just want to belong. A self-help seminar. A Bible study. A yoga class. A political movement. Something normal. Something that feels safe. And by the time people realize the group has become something else entirely, it's often too late to leave. These 5 groups all started with good intentions. None of them ended that way. The People's Temple started in Indianapolis in 1955 as a genuinely progressive church. Jim Jones preached racial integration at a time when most American churches were rigidly segregated. He adopted children of multiple races. He organized food programs for the poor. He was publicly endorsed by politicians and civic leaders. The People's Temple was, by every external measure, a force for social good. Jones was charismatic, tireless, and passionate about equality. People who joined in the early years described feeling like they'd found a family. The church grew. It moved to California. Jones became a political player in San Francisco, delivering thousands of votes and volunteer hours. He was appointed to the city's Housing Authority Commission. Newspapers praised him. But behind the public image, Jones was deteriorating. He became increasingly paranoid, drug-addicted, and controlling. He demanded total loyalty. Members signed over their possessions, their paychecks, their children. He staged fake faith healings. He punished dissent with public humiliation and physical beatings. And when the pressure from defectors and journalists got too intense, he moved over 900 followers to a compound he'd built in the jungles of Guyana. On November 18, 1978, after a visit from Congressman Leo Ryan, who was shot and killed on the airstrip trying to leave with defectors, Jones ordered the final white night. Over 900 people died, most from cyanide-laced punch. A third of the dead were children. It remains the largest deliberate loss of American civilian life until September 11th. The people who drank the poison weren't stupid. They weren't weak. Many were educated, politically engaged, idealistic people who had joined a church that stood for justice and ended up in a jungle, watching their children die. That's how cults work. The beginning never looks like the end. NXIVM, pronounced NXIVM, began in 1998 as Executive Success Programs, a self-improvement company based in Albany, New York. Its founder, Keith Raniere, marketed it as a technology for achieving human potential. The seminars used a proprietary system called rational inquiry that Raniere claimed could eliminate psychological limitations and help participants achieve their goals. The early enrollees were professionals, doctors, lawyers, actresses, business owners. The Bronfman sisters, heiresses to the Seagram liquor fortune, invested over $100 million. Actress Allison Mack became a devoted follower. The seminars weren't cheap. Multi-day intensives could cost thousands of dollars, but participants reported genuine breakthroughs in confidence and clarity. The structure was built on a ranking system, colored sashes, like a martial art where advancement required recruiting new members and purchasing additional courses. This is the first red flag that's easy to miss, a self-help program that requires you to sell the program to others in order to advance within it. Over time, NXIVM developed inner circles with escalating commitment. The deepest circle, a secret women's group called DOS, required members to provide collateral nude photographs, damaging confessions, financial information that would be released if they left. Members were branded with Raniere's initials using a cauterizing pen. They were put on severe caloric restriction diets. Some were coerced into sexual relationships with Raniere. In 2018, Raniere was arrested in Mexico. He was convicted on sex trafficking, racketeering, and forced labor charges and sentenced to 120 years in prison. The people who joined NXIVM thought they were attending a professional development seminar. That's the trap. 3 more groups to go, and each one started even more innocently than the last. If you want to understand how normal becomes dangerous, subscribe to Mind Trap. We study the psychology behind the darkest group dynamics. Hit subscribe and the bell. Let's continue. SHINRIKYO started in 1984 as a small yoga and meditation class in a Tokyo apartment. Its founder, Shoko Asahara, taught a blend of Buddhist and Hindu meditation techniques. The early members were mostly educated young Japanese professionals who were searching for spiritual meaning in a society that prized material success above all else. Asahara was partially blind, charismatic in an unconventional way, and presented himself as a gentle spiritual teacher. The group incorporated officially as a religious organization in 1987, gaining tax-exempt status. By the early 1990s, it had thousands of members across Japan and had opened branches in Russia, where it recruited aggressively. But Asahara's teachings gradually shifted from personal enlightenment to apocalyptic prophecy. He became obsessed with the end of the world and convinced himself and his followers that they were destined to survive an imminent catastrophe. The group began recruiting chemists, physicists, and engineers. They built laboratories. They stockpiled chemicals. On March 20, 1995, 5 AOM members boarded separate Tokyo subway cars during the morning rush and punctured bags of liquid sarin, a nerve agent. 13 people died. Over 6,000 were injured. It was the worst terrorist attack in Japanese history. The group that started as a yoga class in an apartment had manufactured weapons-grade chemical agents and deployed them against civilians. Asahara was arrested, tried, and executed in 2018. But the organization still exists in modified form, under the name Aleph, and still has followers. Marshall Applewhite was a music professor. Bonnie Nettles was a nurse. When they met in the early 1970s, they developed a shared belief system that combined Christianity, science fiction, and UFO mythology. They started a group, originally just a study circle, that they called Human Individual Metamorphosis. The pitch was that Earth was about to be recycled and that a select group of humans could achieve a higher level of existence by leaving their physical bodies behind and boarding a spacecraft. It sounds absurd from the outside. But the early members describe Applewhite and Nettles as warm, intelligent, and deeply sincere. They weren't conmen. They believed everything they taught. And their early teachings emphasized self-improvement, community, and transcending the material world values that appeal to thoughtful, searching people. Over 2 decades, the group became increasingly isolated. Members gave up careers, families, and possessions. They wore matching uniforms. Several male members, including Applewhite, underwent voluntary castration. They moved into a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California, and supported themselves by building websites. They were actually talented web designers in the early internet era. In March 1997, when Comet Hale-Bopp became visible in the night sky, Applewhite told his followers that a spacecraft was traveling in the comet's wake and that it was time to leave their bodies. 39 members, including Applewhite, died by suicide over 3 days in a calm, organized manner. They were found wearing identical black Nike sneakers, lying neatly in their bunk beds, with purple shrouds over their faces and $5 bills and quarters in their pockets. A music professor and a nurse started a study group. 39 people died wearing matching sneakers. The distance between those two facts is 22 years of slow, incremental escalation that nobody inside could see. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, later known as Osho, began teaching in India in the 1960s. His philosophy was a seductive blend of Eastern mysticism, Western psychology, and radical personal freedom. He rejected traditional religious austerity. He encouraged his followers to embrace pleasure, emotional expression, and material comfort. His talks were brilliant, funny, and genuinely insightful. Academics and therapists traveled from around the world to hear him speak. His commune in Pune attracted thousands. The atmosphere was electric, people dancing, weeping, breaking through emotional barriers. Former members describe it as one of the most alive experiences of their lives. It felt like revolution. It felt like freedom. In 1981, the Rajneesh movement purchased a 64,000-acre ranch in rural Oregon and built an entire city, Rajneeshpuram. It had its own airstrip, shopping mall, fire department, and bus system. It was impressive, ambitious, and immediately controversial with the local community. What happened next is one of the most bizarre chapters in American history. The commune's leadership, particularly Rajneesh's personal secretary Ma Anand Sheela, engaged in a campaign of poisoning, wiretapping, immigration fraud, and voter manipulation. They attempted to contaminate the water supply of a nearby town. They poisoned salad bars at local restaurants with salmonella, sickening 751 people, the largest bioterror attack in U.S. history. They bussed in thousands of homeless people from around the country to register them as voters and swing a local election. Rajneesh was deported. Sheila was imprisoned. The commune collapsed. And the people who had come to Oregon seeking spiritual liberation found themselves complicit in biological warfare. Here is what connects all 5 of these stories. None of them started as cults. They started as communities built around ideas that sounded reasonable: racial justice, self-improvement, meditation, spiritual growth, transcendence. The people who joined were not looking for a cult. They were looking for meaning, connection, purpose. The same things everyone looks for. The transition from community to cult doesn't happen overnight. It happens one small step at a time. A little more commitment. A little more isolation. A little more control disguised as care. And by the time the demands become extreme, the members have already given up their support systems, their outside relationships, and their ability to critically evaluate what's happening. The most dangerous thing about cults isn't the crazy beliefs. It's that the beginning looks exactly like something you'd want to join. If this changed how you think about group dynamics, good. That's the point. The best defense against manipulation isn't intelligence, it's awareness. Knowing the pattern. Knowing the warning signs. Subscribe to Mind Trap. We study the psychology that most people don't want to look at. I'll see you in the next one. Trust yourself. Question everything else.